If you think the worst thing that can happen a month before your wedding is the caterer messing up or the tuxedo not fitting, then you probably haven't been truly in love with someone who turned out to be nothing but a perfect facade. I thought I knew Sarah. We'd been together for 2 years, and those years felt like a highlight reel of a happy life. Dinners, trips, plans for a home. She's beautiful, ambitious, and always knows what she wants. I used to think that was a good thing. Turns out, it's her biggest flaw. The night she demanded I do the unthinkable, I felt the world I'd so carefully built around myself crack. I was sitting on the couch in the living room, reviewing the guest list. There were exactly 28 days left until the wedding. This was the final, last look before sending everything off to the printer. I was relaxed, and Sarah was massaging my neck. Everything was calm. Too calm. "Mark," she said. Her voice was even, devoid of any emotion. I instantly knew something was wrong. Sarah never speaks like that unless she's about to announce bankruptcy or a death. I've been thinking, and we need to talk about Emma. Emma is my younger sister. She's 3 years my junior. After that terrible car accident 3 years ago, when she got hit by a truck, her life was turned upside down. She is confined to a wheelchair. It was hard on everyone, but especially her. I've always been her rock, and she's been mine. She, by the way, was the only person who immediately told me that Sarah was the one when we first met at a charity gala. It was Emma, sitting in her chair, who encouraged me to go talk to Sarah. She knew what I needed before I did. I owe her everything. "What about Emma?" I asked, feeling the tension start to coil in my gut. Sarah stopped massaging my neck. She sat opposite me, legs crossed, and looked at me as if I were a child who needed to be told why you can't put your fingers in an electrical socket. "Look, honey, I know how much you love your sister, but the wedding is one day, our day, and I want it to be perfect. You saw our budget for the photographer. He shouldn't be working for a rehab center photo shoot." I didn't immediately understand what she was saying. The sound of the words got through, but the meaning didn't register. "What are you talking about?" "Her. The wheelchair, Mark. It just doesn't look elegant. Our wedding photos will hang in the living room for a lifetime. And the chair, it will be distracting. Everyone will be looking at her, talking about her story, about how poor she is. This isn't her day. This is our day." I felt the blood rush to my face. It was so low, so cynical, that I couldn't believe the words were coming from the mouth of the woman I was about to spend the rest of my life with. "Are you serious? You're asking me to uninvite my sister from my own wedding because of a damn chair?" Sarah sighed, as if I were an idiot who couldn't grasp simple truths. "I'm not asking. I'm demanding that you talk to her. Tell her it will be too difficult for her, that she'll get tired. That we'll celebrate later, in a more intimate setting. She'll understand. She always has understood you." That's when I snapped. I grabbed the guest list and hurled it onto the floor. It landed right on the sketch of Sarah's wedding dress that was on the coffee table. "She helped us meet." My voice was too loud. It was shaking with rage. "She's the only family member who genuinely accepted you, Sarah. And you think I'm going to act like I'm ashamed of her? That she will ruin the photos? Do you even hear yourself?" At that moment, Sarah did something that shocked me more than her demand. She looked at me with utterly cold, empty eyes that I had never seen before, and said, "If she is there, there will be no wedding, Mark. You choose." And that's when I realized. This woman I loved, on whom I had staked everything I had, was willing to destroy everything. Our shared month before the wedding, our shared plans, just to eliminate the only thing that didn't fit into her picture of a perfect, glossy, flawless day. This wasn't a conflict about a guest list. This was a conflict about who I was, who she was, and what truly mattered to us. It was a hard hook that knocked me out of my comfort zone, and it took the rest of the night for me to make the decision that would define everything. I chose Emma, of course, but the price of that choice had only just begun to surface. After I threw the guest list on the floor, the room went silent. Not a peaceful silence, but the kind that screams with unspoken accusations. Sarah didn't yell back, which, looking back, was more terrifying than any argument. She just stared at me, her face perfectly composed, like a marble statue that just delivered an ultimatum. "So that's it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, the adrenaline finally starting to drop, leaving behind a cold, shaky exhaustion. "You're seriously telling me you'd cancel the whole thing? The venue deposits, the rings, everything, over Emma's chair? Don't be dramatic, Mark, she said, finally breaking the silence. She sounded bored, which somehow made it worse. It's about the bigger picture. It's about what we represent. We're building a brand, a life that looks successful and effortless. Having a relative in a wheelchair at the absolute pinnacle of our public event, it changes the narrative. It makes people feel sorry for us. I don't want pity, I want admiration. That word, admiration, hit me harder than the uninvitation demand. My sister, my flesh and blood, the person who taught me what unconditional love was just a potential wrinkle in her image. I walked away needing air. I went out onto the small balcony and stared at the city lights. It was a Tuesday, the city was alive, and I was watching my life burn down quietly in the apartment behind me. I called Emma. It was late, but she always answers. Hey, big brother, she chirped, the sound of her voice instantly soothing the raw edges of my anger. She had no idea what was happening. Hey, Em, just checking in. Busy month ahead, right? I tried to keep my tone light, but it was like speaking through cement. Tell me about it. I already bought the dress. Mom helped me find one that looks great even when I'm sitting down. I can't wait to see you and Sarah get married. You know I have to be there to make sure you don't run away. The innocence in her voice was a punch to the gut. She was planning, excited, viewing this day as a milestone for us. And my fiancé saw her as a piece of awkward furniture. That's great, Em. Listen, about the dress. I love you. That was all I could manage. I couldn't lie to her, but I couldn't tell her the truth yet either. I hung up before she could ask why I sounded like I was holding back a sob. The next day, the tension between Sarah and me was palpable. We moved around the apartment like strangers in a tiny house. I kept avoiding eye contact. She acted like nothing had happened, focusing on her work and making calls about the seating chart. But every time she mentioned perfect symmetry or visual flow, I felt a physical aversion. I spent the next week, the one starting 27 days before the wedding, obsessively reviewing the last few months. How did I miss this? I started seeing small things, the way she talked about my old car, not on brand. The way she cut off a conversation when my mom started talking about budgeting instead of just vacation homes. The subtle, yet constant pressure to upgrade everything. She wasn't just ambitious. She was ruthlessly calculating. I confronted her again on Friday. I couldn't stand the silence. Look, Sarah, I'm not talking to Emma. She is coming to the wedding. End of discussion. She stopped what she was doing, arranging flowers on the kitchen island, and slowly turned to me. Her expression hardened. You're making a mistake, Mark. A huge one. This isn't about me being cruel. This is about being realistic. You need to grow up and see what the world values. Your sister is a liability, an emotional anchor. I am your future. She's my family. You can't just discard people who aren't perfectly aligned with your 5-year plan. Watch me, she said, picking up a white lily. I will not have my day compromised. You have until the end of the weekend to fix this, or I'm calling the venue and canceling my dress fitting. And then you can explain to everyone why you chose a piece of metal over the woman who was going to make you successful. The threat was real. I knew it. She wasn't bluffing. But I also knew I couldn't live with myself if I betrayed Emma. The clock was ticking, and the air in our shared space was growing thick with an acidic, desperate need to control the narrative. I had to find a way to make her back down without destroying everything. But with every passing hour, the everything she valued seemed less and less worth saving. The deeper I looked into her motivations, the more terrifying the abyss of our life together became. My dilemma wasn't just about a wedding guest. It was about choosing between love and performance. The weekend passed in a haze of icy silence. 25 days until the wedding. I hadn't spoken to Emma again, and I hadn't given Sarah an answer she wanted. Monday morning, she initiated the hard conflict I knew was coming. I was getting ready for work, tying my tie in front of the bathroom mirror. Sarah walked in, fully dressed in a tailored suit, looking like she was about to close a 7-figure deal, not ruin my life. She was holding her phone. I took the liberty of calling the venue coordinator. Mark, she said, her voice sharp and controlled. I stopped breathing. What did you tell her? I asked about the feasibility of a last-minute cancellation. I told her we were having unforeseen family complications that might necessitate postponing. She was understandably concerned, but she held the date for now. I also told the florist to pause the order. They're waiting on my confirmation. Everything is on hold. I stared at her reflection. She wasn't just threatening anymore. She was actively dismantling our wedding, piece by piece, like tearing pages out of a book. You didn't have the right to do that, Sarah. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars in deposits. You're being completely reckless. No, you are being reckless, she countered, stepping closer, her eyes boring into mine. You're prioritizing a sentimental gesture over the rest of our life. You're letting emotion cloud your judgment, which is exactly what I can't tolerate in a husband. If you can't make the hard decision now to protect our future and our image, how are you going to run a business with me? This wasn't about the photos anymore. It was a test of loyalty and control. She wanted to see if she could make me choose her vision over my values. The hard decision is marrying someone who sees my sister as an eyesore. I shot back. And if you want to talk about family complications, let's talk about yours. Your father hasn't called you in 3 months, and you keep deleting his messages. You hide the reality of your own family, but you want to put mine on trial. That landed. Her composure cracked. A flash of pure, cold rage crossed her face, the first raw emotion I'd seen since the ultimatum. Don't bring my father into this, she hissed. That's different. That's private. Emma's situation is public, visible, and uncontrollable. And that is the problem. Uncontrollable? She's the strongest person I know. She's my best friend. She's a burden that costs you time and emotional energy you should be investing in me and our joint goals, Sarah said, folding her arms. I've been tolerant of the endless physical therapy appointments, the hospital visits, the guilt trips from your mother, but not on the one day that's supposed to solidify our status. Mark, I am not being unreasonable. I am being strategic. If you can't be strategic with me, you're choosing her pity party over my partnership. She dropped the ultimate bomb then. I've booked a flight to see my mother this afternoon. I told my maid of honor that the wedding is off, effective immediately, unless I hear from you by midnight tonight that Emma will not be in attendance. The rings are in the safe. Call me when you decide which family you want to build. She grabbed her briefcase and walked out, slamming the apartment door hard enough to rattle the cheap glass on the frames. The silence returned, but this time it was deafening, suffocating. My hands were shaking so much I couldn't finish tying my tie. She had called my bluff and raised the stakes to an impossible height. The wedding wasn't postponed, it was canceled. 24 days left, and I was standing in a half-packed apartment, forced to choose between the woman I loved and the sister who was my heart. I knew that whatever I chose, the life I'd built over the last 2 years was already gone. I just had to figure out which pieces I was going to try and save. I spent that night alone in the apartment, staring at the empty side of the bed. Sarah was gone, the rings were locked away, and the wedding was essentially dead. 24 days left, and I was caught between an impossible choice. My guilt over Emma was a physical ache, but the thought of destroying the life I'd built with Sarah, the potential, the future she promised, was paralyzing. I didn't know how to move forward without breaking someone's heart, probably my own. I called my sister the next morning. I drove to her place, a small, accessible apartment she was renting after she'd finally left the family home to gain independence. When I walked in, she was struggling to move a heavy box of old photos from one shelf to another. She stopped and smiled when she saw me. Hey, you look terrible, Mark. Long night with the seating charts? I sat down heavily on her sofa. Something like that, Em. Look, I need to talk to you about the wedding. I started carefully, trying to find a gentle way to introduce the topic, but the words caught in my throat. I couldn't bring myself to say, my fiancé finds your wheelchair aesthetically displeasing. I just couldn't. I'm worried it's going to be too much for you. I finally managed, leaning into Sarah's weak argument. It's a huge venue, a lot of people, a lot of commotion. Emma's smile disappeared. Her eyes, which were usually full of light, clouded over. Don't treat me like an invalid, Mark. I'm not a delicate flower. I've been through literal hell, and I'm fine. I helped you plan this thing. What's really going on? She wheeled her chair closer to me. This isn't you. Did Sarah say something? The directness of her question was the moral dilemma I needed. Lie to my sister and preserve the chance of the wedding, or tell the truth and completely destroy the illusion of my perfect life with Sarah. I took a deep breath. She wants you not to come. She thinks it will ruin the aesthetic of the photographs. I expected tears, or maybe anger. What I got was a look of cold, fierce disappointment directed not at Sarah, but at me. "And what did you say?" Emma asked, the flatness of her tone worse than any scream. "Did you defend me? Did you remind her that I'm the reason you two even met? Did you tell her that if she can't accept all of me, she can't have any of you?" I told her no, Em. I told her you were coming. And she canceled the wedding. Everything is on hold unless I agree to her terms. She flew out of town yesterday. Emma looked away, toward the window. The silence stretched until I thought it would break the air. When she spoke, her voice was low, almost a whisper. "Mark, I love you. You know that. But you need to understand something. Sarah didn't just ask you to exclude me. She used me to test your loyalty and your priorities. She wanted to know if you'd choose her image over your integrity. And she won't stop testing you." She paused, turning back to face me, her gaze steady. "But I think you need to go ahead with the wedding." I blinked. "What? No, Em, I'm not." "Hear me out," she interrupted, raising a hand. "I'm not giving you an easy out. I want you to go to her, agree to her terms, tell her I won't be there. Get her to commit, get the date back on track, and put the rings back on. 23 days left. I need you to go through with the ceremony." I was stunned. "Why would you say that? Are you trying to save my wedding?" A flicker of something I couldn't place, not pain, not pity, but pure determination, crossed her face. This was the major plot twist, and it blindsided me. "No, Mark. I'm doing this for you. You need to see who she is, and you need the world to see it too. I won't be at the ceremony, I promise. You can tell Sarah that. But I'm going to be there for the reception. And when I get there, I'm going to give you a wedding gift that will make Sarah's perfect day completely uncontrollable. Now go. You have a fiancé to appease." I walked out of her apartment with my head spinning. I had a path forward, but it was paved with deception. I had to betray my sister's trust to my fiancé, only to potentially set up an even bigger confrontation later. I called Sarah and told her what she wanted to hear. The wedding was back on, but I knew Emma had something planned, something that would change everything, and I was about to walk into the final act blind. The next 3 weeks, the final countdown to the wedding, were the most hypocritical of my life. 2 days left. I played the role of the devoted fiancé to Sarah, agreeing to all the seating changes she made, listening to her talk about the perfect visual balance of the reception hall. I told her I had explained to Emma that the ceremony would be too taxing for her, and she had understood. Sarah was ecstatic. She had won. She even told me she was proud of me for making the mature decision. I hated myself with every compliment she gave me. I only spoke to Emma once, a brief phone call where she simply said, "I have the dress, and the wheels are greased. Don't worry about me. Worry about the look on your wife's face." It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. The wedding day. The ceremony was exactly what Sarah wanted, flawless, expensive, and emotionally sterile. My parents were there, looking awkward and confused about Emma's absence, but Sarah had charmed them into believing it was Emma's choice. I was a puppet, mouthing the vows while thinking of the lie I'd told my sister. Then came the reception. Sarah was circulating, glowing in her $1,000 dress, accepting compliments on her taste and perfect execution. The room was white, gold, and everything she dreamed of. I scanned the room constantly, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Around 8 p.m., after the first dance and the obligatory speeches, the DJ did what Emma must have arranged. He dimmed the lights and announced, "A special dedication to the groom, Mark, from his loving sister, Emma." My stomach dropped. Sarah froze mid-conversation with her maid of honor. She looked over at me, her eyes narrow with pure suspicion. The double doors at the far end of the ballroom opened. There was Emma, in a beautiful, royal blue dress. She was in her wheelchair, just as she should be. Sarah let out a quiet, furious hiss. "You lied to me, Mark. Get her out of here now." "Too late," I whispered, watching my sister. The room went quiet. Emma was wheeled slowly into the center of the floor, right near the bridal party's table. People began to murmur, the pity and curiosity that Sarah feared finally filling the air. Emma looked completely calm. She gave me a small, intense smile. Then she did it. She pushed against the wheels, straightened her spine, and using the armrests for support, she slowly, painfully, began to stand. A collective gasp swept through the ballroom. My mother sobbed out loud. I couldn't move. I knew she had been in relentless physical therapy, working towards this moment, but I never knew it was this close. It took every ounce of her strength, but she stood there, swaying slightly, completely out of the chair for the first time in 3 years. Then, she took a step. A clumsy, shuffling, agonizing step. Then another. And another. She was walking, maybe 5 or 6 steps, directly toward our table. The room was no longer silent. It was filled with genuine, loud, emotional applause and tears. People were rising to their feet, cheering, not out of pity, but out of pure, overwhelming admiration for her courage. The entire reception had been hijacked, not by a wheelchair, but by an act of sheer will and love. I rushed to her, catching her as her legs finally gave out, lowering her gently back into the chair. I was crying, holding her tight, oblivious to the 100 guests watching. "Emma, you did it. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you needed to see it work, Mark," she said, breathlessly, but with a triumphant grin. "I did the first part for me. This part was for you." I looked up. Everyone was looking at Emma, but the one person I locked eyes with was Sarah. Her face was a mask of cold, unadulterated fury and defeat. She was shaking, but not from emotion. She was vibrating with the realization that the narrative was lost. Her perfect day was now the story of the miraculous sister. Her brand was tarnished. All the attention, the spotlight she craved, was stolen by the very person she tried to eliminate. She stormed up to the table, grabbed me by the arm, and dragged me to the quiet coat room. "You let her do this," she hissed, her voice low and dangerous. "You let her make a mockery of our wedding. I told you what would happen if she was here. This is unacceptable, Mark. Everything is ruined." "No, Sarah," I said, finally, clearly, and without an ounce of self-doubt. "Nothing is ruined. Everything is just clear. You stood here and watched a physical miracle, an incredible act of love and recovery, and all you can focus on is that it stole the spotlight from your shoes. You proved Emma right. You proved that your entire life is a performance, and my sister is too real for your perfect picture. That's not a partner. That's a prison." I took off my wedding ring, which felt suddenly heavy and cold, and placed it in her hand. "You won, Sarah. Emma didn't attend the ceremony, but you lost something far more important at the reception." I walked back out into the cheers and the music. I didn't look back at the coat room. I spent the rest of the evening by my sister's side, watching people line up to congratulate her. Sarah flew out the next morning. The marriage lasted less than 24 hours. The divorce was messy, but irrelevant. I kept the house. The wedding funds went to Emma's continued physical therapy. Sometimes, a hard choice isn't about choosing the better option, but choosing the one that preserves your soul. I didn't get the perfect wife, but I kept the most important thing I had, my integrity. And as I sat with Emma a week later, looking at the viral videos of her taking those first steps, I finally understood that the real, perfect picture wasn't taken on my wedding day, but on the day I realized some things are worth more than a flawless image.